This is the Bible of the electrogenic cell. It's not just the best book ever written on the subject, it's the only book ever written on this subject. Brought to you by supporters of Christ.
Oh, I know what I'm supposed to do. I know what I'm supposed to do. Good, good thing I have my grocery shopping list. Don't leave home without it.
All right. Let's get busy with the get busy. Let's get busy with the get busy. All right, we're on page, I'm about to say 131. We're on page 331. Page 331. We are just past, well, we're not just past, but we are into the second half of the book. It feels good when you put a nice dent in the book. Like when you get a new thick book, it'd be a little intimidating. It might be a little intimidating. You put a little dent in it, then you start to feel like you cooking. You feel like you working. Yeah. You put a little dent in that thing, you feel like you working. Like, share, super chat, subscribe, follow, Patreon/Dr. Inky. Go to AmericanHealer.website, get you some products, hit the Cash App, hit the Zelle, hit the PayPal, go to Amazon, get the books for the new classes coming up, get the books for the existing classes. Don't forget, you have to have the electrogenic Bible for your daily inspiration. And for your homework, right? And for your homework. So, yeah, there is that. And we have the Codex, the Electrogenic Bible, the Codex of Living Current. We have that book on Kindle. We have that book on Kindle. So that way it's easier for people to copy stuff out of the book and send it to other people and share stuff. Right? We want you to be able to inspire as many as you can. Go grab somebody by the hand, bring them to the truth. Right? I have more than a dent in this book. Show off. You know what I didn't do? I didn't put a date on the cutoff for midterms. That's what Tika's reminded me of. I needed to put a cutoff on the midterms. I should have put a cutoff on there. But since I did not put a cutoff on there, feel free to continue to build on your midterms. Feel free to keep building. right? And that is happening in the Patreon. All right. Before we get into the book, before we get into the textbook, if you do not have this book and this book, if you do not have these books, go to Amazon. Add these to your cart and check out, right? This is Speak It Into Existence, the End of Heart Disease Mathematically, right? And then this is the Soulcraft Observer Effect Electrician Prayer Manual. It does not look like it, but these books go back to back. These books go back to back. And yeah, I was a little thrown off. I was a little emotional and thrown off. My little brother had just OD'd while I was in the middle, literally just like writing this book. So there's a lot of other things that bled into this book, pun intended, right? But the reason why I bring these two books up is because they expand on what we're getting ready to talk about for week 10, day 2. Week 10, day 2, we're kind of I'm not gonna say kind of. We're gonna touch on. We're gonna talk about emotions and eating, and maybe even emotional eating. But more so, we're going to talk about emotions and eating. Right. The reason why these books are important is because in these books we talk about the almond, right? The sacred almond. In those two books, we talk about the sacred almond. In this book, we are kind of just in the modern science space, right? So we have the articles and all that kind of stuff. And then in this book, we kind of dig back into the ancient references, the biblical references for the same information, right? So in the first book, it's today, it's scientific journals, it's still brand new discovery that hasn't really been, like proliferated or distributed or shared with the masses, right? Hasn't really been shared to the masses. But we talk about how the amygdala plays a key role in triggering heart attacks, cardiac events, right? How the amygdala kills people, literally. How the amygdala kills people via fear and anger, right? Which is a part of the conversation to emotionally charged eating, right? Emotionally charged eating. So in the textbook, we kind of get more into, a discussion about leptin and ghrelin and catecholamines and stuff like that. But before we get into the weeds, I just want to, and maybe I'll remember to do it again later, but I just wanted to give people a real time. I'm gonna try to remember to do it again later, but I just wanted to give people a real-time space where this is relevant outside of people trying to lose some weight. You know what I'm saying? Because people that are already, feel like they're fit or already at their ideal weight, they might feel like a conversation about emotional eating isn't something they have to worry about. And there are, a zillion different cases with athletes falling down and not getting back up, bodybuilders having heart attacks and all kinds of other issues that heretofore have not necessarily had reasoning. Parts and their interactions have not been identified, right? Parts and interactions have not been identified. So now we have a scientific mechanism for cardiac events, end stage, like death. We actually have identified parts and their interactions, right? And these are listed in a variety of scientific journals. For me, the magic was not only finding the information, but also being able to go back and look at some scripture and go, this is here, right? But for many people, that's going to be a lot less important than just understanding how to, hit that staying alive. Right? Most important thing is going to be staying alive, right? Saturday Night Live. Was that Saturday Night Fever? I don't know. That's my mom's generation. Let's go. Let's go. Let's start it off right. Let's start it off right with the super chat. That's what I'm talking about. We got to start things off right. Let's go. Yeah. Yeah, we're gonna give some praise, some love. We're gonna, dua to I-10 for the, you know what I'm saying? For the super chat. All right. So again, we're on page 331. Your homework, which everybody should be doing. You know what I'm saying? Like when it's a day or 2 or 3 days between that we don't go live, y'all supposed to still be like, y'all got more than enough information to read, study. Half y'all ain't finished or even start your midterms yet. Okay, yeah. I knew it. Yeah. This homework was interesting. Week 10, day 1. Week 10, day 1 was one of those days. Hold on. Week 10, day 1 is one of those days. The homework is in the book. Why do cells accumulate fat? Right? So this is where you were supposed to be doing some research. You were supposed to be actively doing some research. Why do cells accumulate fat? Right? You were supposed to be doing some active research. Yep. Even though we go through and provide answers and mechanisms, etc., right? You were supposed to still be doing some research. Right? Yeah. We got to get you off the training wheels. You were supposed to be doing some live research. Yo, I can't hold y'all. My chat be super quiet when I start talking about where is people's midterms at. Hey, yo, the chat be quiet. I'll be like, where is the midterms? I can hear my ceiling fan moving. All right. Look. Yeah. Yeah. Man, what y'all, come on, what y'all doing? Y'all got to get this work going. Paul said, I got you in 2 weeks. In 2 weeks. Midterm was 2 weeks ago. It's all good. It's all good, man. We working. And I didn't put a date on it. I did not put a date on it, so. All good. All good. What I want to do? Do I want to go to the Google Demons? I think I want to go to the Google Demons. Yeah, I want to go to the Google Demons. What is this? Man, I got so much different research open on my computer. One of my laptops, my main laptop, that joint, like, I had to take it to the shop today. I'm praying they don't want $1 zillion to fix it. I'm going to be on here trying to dance for money or something. For real. I'm going to be on here trying to dance for money. I got my protein book and my water book hitting the door. Come on, Paul. That's what I'm talking about. Let's go. Paul leading by example. Let's go. Stop laughing at me, Tika. I've been working. You know what I'm saying? I've been working. Listen, y'all know it's no way that I'm getting ready to have a debate without a book dropping. What? Man. All right. So I've been working. So I want to go here though. I'm gonna go here. Let's see. Let me see. I'm not sure if this is what I'm looking for, but we'll look around together. We will look around together. Let's see. Stress-induced cortisol response is associated with right amygdala volume in early childhood. Dysregulation of the hypothalamic pituitary adrenal axis and the resultant cortisol stress response can alter the structure of the hippocampus and amygdala. Because early life changes in brain structure can produce later functional impairment and potentially increase risk for psychiatric disorders. It is critical to understand the relationship between the cortisol stress response and brain structure in early childhood. However, no study to date has characterized the concurrent association between cortisol stress response and hippocampal and amygdala volume in young children. In the present study, 42 children completed a frustration task and cortisol response to stress was measured. Okay, this might be not what I was looking for, but it might be one of those things that when you dig it in the crates, sometimes you find something that you didn't know you was looking for. You was looking for it though, but you didn't know you was looking for it. All right. This research explored the concurrent association. We found that elevated cortisol stress response was associated with reduced right amygdala volume, controlling for whole brain volume, age, sex, and number of cortisol samples. This result also held when controlling for the negative impact of stressful life events, time of day, depressive symptoms. By demonstrating the link between cortisol stress response and subcortical brain structure in young children, our findings represent an important first step in understanding the relationship between stress hormones and the structure of the developing brain. The work supports the idea that how children respond to stress could play an important role in their neurodevelopmental trajectory. Furthermore, because cortisol stress response and amygdala volume have been linked to psychiatric disorders, this work raises the possibility. All right, see, now you know what's funny about something like this? That type of article can be taken in a variety of directions, right? Because you can read that article and then you can, like, an article like that could be used to, make life too soft for your children, right? You can read that and go, I don't want my children to experience any stress because it could possibly blah, 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 but that's not how I would interpret that, especially after having a bunch of children in real time. Like, children need to be able to manage stress, which is a part of the reason why you need to give them chores and responsibilities and, yell at them or punish them or stop them from their phone, video game, whatever you do to chastise them when they fail, with whatever it is that they're supposed to be responsible for, accountable for, feeding the turtle, walking the dog, feeding the turtle or walking the dog. Yeah, but you need to build them. You got to build them so that they don't collapse under pressure, because when they get out into the real world, the one thing for sure is that they will have pressure to manage, right? And so just as much as, and let me pull this up. Let me find these articles from the book. Okay. Not the melanin and cocaine articles. Okay, I think it's this. Okay, yeah. All right, let me pull up one of these articles that we reference in the book. Between is that right there? Yeah. Let me see. Is y'all gonna give me the article or y'all gonna give me a bunch of baloney? Okay, we can work with the Lancet. Yeah, we can work with the Lancet. All right, so this article, as you can see, relatively still new, not even 10 years off the press, 2017. Relation between resting amygdala activity and cardiovascular events, a longitudinal and cohort study. Findings: 293 patients were included in the longitudinal study, 22 of whom had a cardiovascular disease event during the median follow-up of 3 to 7 years. Amygdala activity was associated with increased bone marrow activity, arterial inflammation, and risk of cardiovascular disease events, a finding that remains significant after multivariate increased bone marrow activity and arterial inflammation in series. In the separate cross-sectional study of patients who underwent psychometric analysis, amygdala activity was significantly associated with arterial inflammation. Perceived stress was associated with amygdala activity, arterial inflammation, and C-reactive protein. All right, now one of the reasons why this is man, all that just happened just like this. Is obviously, well, maybe it's not obvious, but a lot of this centers around stuff that we have been discussing to a greater or lesser extent, right? Bone marrow health, right? Bone marrow health, the was scepter, the aorta, right? Very important in the context of what we've been doing, what we've been building, but particularly interesting to see that these things that we would probably even with even with all of my study, I wouldn't have called that. I wouldn't be able to call that. Like me having an emotional, or stressful situation. And I can't even say just stressful because, again, this is why for so long, we focused on driving in the idea of hormesis training. Hormesis training. Your body develops strength from arduous, hard task, right? So we know about resistance training in terms of hypertrophy or building muscle, right? But resistance training is also dealing with life. Resistance training is also dealing with failure. Resistance training is also, rough relationships, getting dumped or going through a rough breakup or, quitting cigarettes, quitting alcohol, quitting smoking weed or cocaine or pills or whatever it is, porn, whatever you're addicted to, whatever negative addictions that you may be dealing with, stress pressuring you to relapse or withdrawal symptoms or just, you can't stop thinking about them chocolate cookie, whatever it is, all of us are different. All of us experience, resistance, pressure, and stress mentally and emotionally from different things, right? From different things. But the premise is the same, right? The premise is the same, which is the reason why exercise cuts across the, the different human mediums, right? Exercise helps you, helps your physical body, but it also helps your emotional and your mental state. And the reason why is because when we think of, and I guess it's unfortunate, or maybe I'm just lucky. You know, my dad introduced me. I was kind of already studying some stuff, but my dad introduced me to some Chinese folks that helped take my study to another level, like down in Chinatown, New York. You know, even though he knew them for other nefarious, whatever they had going on. But when he saw that I was into certain types of studies, he took me downtown with him and introduced me to some other folks, and they helped, you know, take my studies to a different place. And so I guess what I'm rambling on about is that very early on in my study, physical body for me was a whole thing, as opposed to most people, when they think physical body, they usually just think about skeletal muscle, right? They usually don't think skeletal muscle, fascia or connective tissue. They don't think multiple connected bodies of water. They don't think, you know, electrically linked systems, luminous systems. They don't, it just so many subsystems of the human body, right? And so having a sort of, you know, a semi-Eastern or at least a little bit of time with Eastern philosophy, it helped me to kind of, you know, integrate the idea of holistic past what I would have got had I just been studying, like, you know, the Black holistic space. You know, the Black holistic space is super limited. Respectfully, you know what I'm saying? The Black holistic space is limited to like herbs and maybe melanin, maybe, right? Because depending on who you're talking to, it may or may not, you know, Sabi said melanin doesn't exist, you know what I'm saying? So the Black holistic space is super limited. You know what I'm saying? You gotta get with some white folks to get some thorough study. You know, you gotta get with some Asians. You know, you got to get with some other cultures to really get a better view. So the thing that, you know, muscle tissue, right? Muscle tissue of all sorts, skeletal muscle, cardiovascular muscle, and then your smooth muscle, right? The thing that they all three have in common is, I guess, subatomic and atomic, you know, electric, you know, subatomic and atomic activity. We'll just leave it like that. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. And so chemistry, right? We'll say chemistry, simplify it. But that's the thing that links the physical body to the emotional body and I guess the mental body, right? Or your mental well-being to your emotional well-being and your musculoskeletal well-being or health, right? They're all dependent on the same smooth chemical flow. They're all dependent on the same smooth chemical flow. So does focusing on one mean the other two will be bulletproof? Not exactly, but they are interrelated. And that's the whole idea of holistic. And that's the difference between holistic and naturopathy, because there's even in the naturopathy, you know, in the naturopathy space, there's differences between naturopathic doctors. They have different philosophies. You go to some places and naturopathic doctors are almost identical in their approach to everything as medical doctors. The only thing different is going to be what they prescribe to you. That's the only thing different. Everything else will be kind of the same. So you can run into naturopathic doctors that still have a divided view of the human body, right? They still think in terms of heart. You focus on heart, and something happening other place in the body doesn't necessarily have to do with the heart, right? And so when you have that kind of view of the body, it's hard to, which is the reason why it's taken so many years to even just narrow down this one source for cardiovascular events, right? And when you say cardiovascular events, you don't mean like birthday parties or, like you mean hospital, death, those type of events, right? Because the separatist idea of the human body doesn't allow you to understand that the bone marrow, the aorta, and the amygdala are causing your heart to stop. Because those are in such places that, first of all, you may not even see the connection between the amygdala, the bone marrow, and the aorta, or the main, the main arterial system. But just know when you're reading up on stuff and they say arteries, they usually are talking about the aorta, because the aorta is the arteries. Any artery is something that's branching off of the aorta. There's not another thing. You know what I'm saying? So there's the aorta, and then the little tiny, I ain't gonna say the little tiny because they kind of go in size order, but the blood pathways that branch off of the aorta are considered your arteries, and then when it gets smaller and smaller, the branches that come off of those arteries are considered, now you're getting into capillaries, right? But that's really just size. It's still branching off the aorta. So what happens in the aorta is going to largely dictate artery and capillary, unless you have like a local blockage in one of them places. You know what I'm saying? But so the difference between naturopathic and holistic is, both are, I'm not going to say opposed to chemical, but chemical and surgical are like secondary, tertiary. It's nature first, right? Whether that's massage, hot bath, herbs, algae, whatever, some natural modalities, right? And then synthetic and then surgical after. But it's it's how you view the body, right? So holistic is supposed to be a unified picture of all of the systems in the body together, right? And that's why I say you kind of get some limited views in the Black holistic space, because the Black holistic space is just loaded with herbal salesmen, just people trying to sell the herbs. And it's not to take anything away from the herbs, because AmericanHealer.website, you know what I'm talking about? Go get you some herbs. But if you just only, every video, it's herb this and herb that, that's not a holistic view. That's not a holistic view. There's no focus on water. There's no focus on light. There's no focus on, the musculoskeletal system. There's no focus on piezoelectric. There's no focus on all of the other different things that, integrate. There's no integrated approach to the body. Herbs is focused on primarily, affecting the body via, what you can eat. And That's a approach. It's an effective approach, but it's not a complete, it's not a full holistic view, right? So important to be able to make that distinction, right? As we're going through and we're having the melanin is anabolic, big fat scam. You know what I'm saying? The big fat scam, burning fat, right? Burning sugar. The largest multi-billion-dollar scam on earth ever ran. Right? Yeah, we have to understand that. That's part of, like, if you watch the fitness channels, there's been a debate back and forth. I don't know, maybe the greater part of 10 years, maybe 5, it got kind of hot. Can you do spot reduction? Right? And spot reduction is like, if I exercise or focus on one area of my body, can I lose weight right there as opposed to losing weight everywhere? Because when people are trying to get their body to look how they want it to look, there's times where you may get, like, say, for instance, a lady, she may get her legs and her butt where she wants them to be, right? Because ladies don't want to lose their thighs, their hips, and their butt. But they do want to lose the stomach, right? So this is like a commonplace, I just want to lose right here. I just want to lose my stomach. I don't want to lose my little thighs and my, you know what I'm saying? I don't, and it's like, gotta be honest with you. Either you're going to have to hold that right there. You're just going to have to be happy with that little fupa, that little, you got to have that little belly. Or we might have to lose a little bit of, you know what I'm saying? Like, we're going to have to lose a little bit of, even in the context of, okay, well, if we turn, if we focus on building the muscle in the abs and the obliques, building the muscles in the glutes, quads, hams, pelvic floor, surrounding hip area, building the muscle takes way more time. Building the muscle takes way more time. You know what I'm saying? You can sculpt by losing weight way faster than you can sculpt by muscle. You know what I'm saying? If there's a concerted effort, you do well, but you're not going to just turn into like all brick house, 7% body fat in 2 weeks. Like, not even TRT and GLP-1 together. You know what I'm saying? Like, mixed with cocaine or whatever like ephedra, there's none of that's going to happen in like 2 weeks. That's just not a thing. You know what I'm saying? So, but that's been a whole debate back and forth. And that's kind of the concept of, whole body, holistic, right? One system. Your body is a system. Your body's a system. That is one of the classical mistakes. That's one of the classical mistakes made in the early medical history of America and Europe. The idea that the body was full of, like extra parts, and you could just kind of like, what I'm saying, cut parts out and you'd be good. Like, yeah, we can just cut some parts out and you still be good. You know what I mean? You have a little pain right there. Don't worry. We just grab that up out of there. And, slowly but surely over time, medicine changed and began to become more civilized. It was very barbaric and savage, mostly cutting, more cutting than anything else. You know what I'm saying? And the craziest thing is that I was having a conversation with one of my neighbors today. Really good guy. You know what I'm saying? Helps me out all the time with certain things. Never asks for anything in return. Really good guy. But we like ops with not ops, but we're opposites. The word opposite is more apropos for the situation. But we have opposing views on like certain things, politics and whatever. So he asked me about RFK. I'm like, well, I think RFK is amazing. He's like, no, I hate RFK. And one of the reasons I like RFK is not necessarily because I think he knows everything or I think he's correct or I agree with his stances. It's just the secrecy is more dangerous than anything when it comes to people's health. Transparency is more important than anything else. So if he gets nothing else right while he's in this office, the fact that he's bringing every single conversation and making it public, for me, is more important than everything else. Because even when he's out of office, this is a trend that will continue to the next folks. So if they think he's underqualified, usually the way things happen is the next person that gets in that seat will be overqualified. But the trend or the expectations will be public discussions on all policies going forward. So that said to say, as we, as what was going on in hospitals began to be more discussed openly, things began to change over time. So now doctors aren't so fast to remove, you know what I'm saying? Because we think about mental illness now. Mental illness 100 years ago, or more, they would have just cut piece of or a whole, they would have just gave you a lobotomy. You know what I'm saying? They would just cut that brain right on up out of there. You know what I'm saying? Women, you probably like maybe 40 years out from having an itch in your privates and getting a hysterectomy. Yo, and the craziest thing is that every time period, right? Every era, it doesn't matter what era it is. Every era, in America anyway, I'm speaking to America, right? So obviously, America's only 400 or 500 years old, but in its current state, don't start getting me with your ancient, Turtle Island and all that. You know what I'm saying? But every generation feels like the doctors know everything. They feel like the doctors know everything. You know what I'm saying? And they've learned all there is to learn. And then the next generation comes along and it's so drastically different from the last generation. But nobody checks the arrogance level. Nobody goes, well, maybe the large problem with last generation and the one before is that their arrogance level was not justified by their understanding. You know what I'm saying? Their ignorance of the human body should have created more humility, more reverence, right? So anyway, my point is mental health, emotional health, and, your physical health all center and, obviously cardiovascular, heart health, but all center around biochemistry. right? Neurochemistry is a subset of biochemistry. So don't feel like if somebody just says biochemistry, neurochemistry is not included, because it is. You know what I'm saying? I try to remember as much as possible to say both, but technically, neurochemistry is a subset of biochemistry. So, that's a catch-all. Okay. Biochemistry is everything. And when you exercise, you take into your hand, you take over the steering wheel. You take over the steering wheel of the car. You take the gear shift. You go from automatic to manual. Now you're in control of everything. And you start to regulate systems. You start to regulate the speed at which systems go. You start to create voluntary stress on the system, right? Voluntary stress on the system, right? Which is the reason why pushing your heart as far as it can go during exercise is great for your mental and your physical and your emotional health. Because when that stress hits you in real life, you'll be better. Your emotional and mental, you'll be more durable for those situations. You'll be more durable for those situations. We have to start thinking that way, right? Exercising for longevity means that you're cognizant of the mental and emotional effects that your diet and your exercise programs can have, right? That was kind of long-winded just to circle around to that point, right? But you know what? This is one of my main favorite, like, I don't know, that might be a little geeky. That could be a little geeky. That might be why I'm single. I might be too much of a nerd. I might be too much of a nerd for a girlfriend. Nobody has favorite scientific journal articles. You know what I'm saying? That might be, yeah. If you have a favorite scientific journal article, you might be crossing the limit. That might be, yeah. There's, being smart is kind of attractive, but then you get favorite scientific, you might be crossing the limit. You might be too. That's you. Yeah, it's Revenge of the Nerds territory. But I don't know. Maybe because people, when I had my little discovery about the wasp, right? So this is just important. It's an article that brings all of those things together. And even though the article is specifically focused on cardiovascular events, like I said, it talks about and highlights how multiple systems that you do not think are working together are actually working together, right? Multiple systems. We forget about bone marrow altogether. We forget about the aorta. When we think of cardiovascular, the aorta is 60% of cardiovascular. The aorta is more important than the heart in terms of cardiovascular health. Because usually it's the aorta that causes problems in the heart. But because the aorta is not like something people talk about, it doesn't get any, there's no conversation, right? But most of that smooth muscle tissue, a lot of nitric oxide synthase activity, if your aorta is not strong and it's not working, or if it's misshapen because those muscles aren't firing properly, right? You're not having a good come on now, peristaltic wave. right? That's going to put more direct pressure on the heart. That's going to put more direct pressure on the heart. It's going to stress out your spine. It's going to stress out your spine. It's going to stress out your brain, right? Because the aorta has to, the blood, the heart kind of just doing its thing right there. The aorta is the one that's got to send everything everywhere. The aorta has to send everything everywhere. So the muscle tissue in the aorta is super, super important. Super important, right? So just having a, like something that we can really just absorb and think about, okay, bone marrow, aorta, amygdala, that's center of the brain, right? We don't even think about the amygdala outside of, fear, anger, or even if we put it together that deep. You know what I'm saying? A lot of people running around talking about chakras. This is one of the dangers of living in a chakra universe, right? While you thinking about crown chakra, you having a heart, your heart stopping because you should have been thinking about amygdala, right? You should have been thinking about amygdala, not crown chakra, right? You should have been thinking about the blood vessels that carry that actual blood to the actual parts of the actual brain. You know what I'm saying? And anyway, just saying. Just saying. All right. So anyway, if you don't have the book, we are flashing the article on you. Flashing the article on you. You need to get the book though, because we go in a lot more detail to break this down in a way that you're not gonna probably get from these doctors writing love letters to each other. That's what this is. Doctors writing love letters to each other. These are not for the general public, right? But they do highlight like those keys. And then I didn't even mention the carotid artery, right? The carotid artery is in the building, right? So you got your aorta, carotid artery, splenic activity, bone marrow, controlled tissue update, right? Subcutaneous fat. Interesting, right? Bone marrow activity. Oh, that just went crazy. So anyway, what I want you to do is while we're going through what we're going to get in, like when we get into the book, I want you to have this in the back of your mind. Like as we're talking about emotions and eating and how emotions sometimes drive our eating patterns, and we get into the, we start talking our leptin talk, and I want you to realize that those are drivers up here, right? Right? I want you to just see that these are drivers up here, right? So when we talk leptin, all the other guys, right? I just want you to keep in mind, right? There's invisible relationships that may not become visible until you are falling onto the ground. Right? Just want you to have that in mind. There are invisible relationships that you may not think about until you are all the way falling onto the ground. Listen, it's very deceptive. It's very deceptive for us to think, subcutaneous and visceral fat, or for us to think, yellow adipose tissue versus brown adipose tissue, right? Those are different classifications for fat, right? And neither of which really gets to the dangerous part, which is, the visceral fat does kind of, you know what I'm saying? But typically when you hear about visceral fat, the conversation is visceral fat surrounding the organ, which is dangerous, but not nearly as dangerous as when visceral fat invades the organ. Not nearly as dangerous as when visceral fat invades the muscle tissue, right? Don't be watching me clean off the board. You know that song? I always feel like somebody's watching me. That's how I be feeling when I be doing the board. You know what I'm saying? I be feeling like I could feel y'all like looking over my shoulder. Like, you know what I'm saying? Watch this.
Oh, I know what I'm supposed to do. Good, good thing I have my grocery shopping list. Don't leave home without it.
Let's bust out a new marker. Okay. Obviously, I cannot. There we go. Like, man, I was starting to feel like that MMA fighter. Yo, it's an MMA fighter. His name is something like Israel Adam something or other. He tried to do an interview and rip off his t-shirt. Like rip his, show he's strong and ready to go or whatever, and he could rip off his t-shirt. That was so crazy. That became a meme. I was starting to feel like that just now with the marker. Yo, hold up, man. Stop trying to hate on my flowery. Yo, what you mean? Yo, they trolling. Man. You trolling for sure. They done came at my shirt. That's crazy. All right. Let's go here. All right, yeah, we probably don't spend enough time talking about the pituitary. So, in fact, we actually gonna go to the Google demons and talk about. Yeah, we're going to the Google demons. And let's see what we get. Your pituitary gland, a small pea-sized gland located at the base of your brain below your hypothalamus. It sits in its own little chamber under your brain known as the sella turcica. It's a part of your endocrine system and is charged in making several essential hormones. Okay, let's skip down to that. Which hormone does the pituitary gland make? Right? ACTH or corticotrophin. ACTH plays a role in how your body responds to stress. It stimulates your adrenal glands to produce cortisol, which has many functions, including metabolism, blood pressure, sugar levels, inflammation, amongst others. Right? All right, now let's go back and let's do this. In the pituitary gland, pro-opiomelanocortin is a precursor protein that is cleaved into several important hormones, including ACTH and melanin stimulating hormone in the anterior and intermediate lobes. These palm seed derived peptides have diverse function, blah, 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 blah. All right. You got to get that watermelon, man. You got to get that watermelon. Yeah, you got to get that watermelon. That watermelon is for that dopamine. Yeah, you got to get that watermelon. American Healer website. Get the watermelon. All right, so right? Is that good? No, that's kind of not good. That's kind of not good, right? Let's go. All right. You know, this is one of the reasons why Jewish people and Muslim people pray before they like kill the animal. This is one of the reasons they pray before they kill the animal. They want to avoid stress hormones in the meat and taking all those hormones into their body via the meat, right? Um, yeah, I'll let you. I'll leave that. You can. You going to jail? Ah, I love you too, though. I appreciate the sentiment. Oh man said better than Adderall. All right. So here's what we got to know. Right? Here's what we got to know. Here's what we got to know. Right? Here's where all of the effects. Here's where stress comes from. Here's where stress comes from. Right? It's still Palm C. It's still the melanin system. Right? It's still the melanin system. It's how your body responds and metabolizes and produces your neurochemistry, right? So a stress response is going to shift the chemistry this way, right? When you shift the chemistry this way, cortisol is going to boost your visceral fat. Visceral fat's going to go up. Blood sugar goes up. Why would blood sugar go up? Why would blood sugar go up and visceral fat go up? Why would blood sugar and visceral fat both increase? Right? Why is that relative to cortisol? Right? Remember, this is fight or flight. Right? We're just gonna put F and F. This is fight or flight right here. Why would your body increase your blood sugar? Why would fight or flight lead your body to increase in blood sugar? Right? Why would your body want to increase your blood sugar? Right? And the only reason why I'm asking this question is because if you start to think logically about your body's systems, you could better, your mind will wrap itself better around how the systems are integrated. Right? If you start thinking about it that way, how your body is integrated, a bunch of integrated systems, right? Why does the blood sugar go up? Correct. That is a fact, right? Because you need all of your muscles. You might need one of those superhuman moments, right? It's not just mothers. That story that keeps getting told over and over and over and over about the mother who could lift the car off of her baby. Like, that's not, come on, bro. Like, that's not exactly a real thing. You know what I'm saying? Because if a car is on your baby, I just don't know what kind of time people think they have for an actual full car to be on top of a baby. Like, in that scenario, if a car is on top of a baby and the baby under a car is still alive, if anybody lifts that car off, mother, father, police, construction, what's them joints, caterpillars, if the baby is still alive with a car on top of it, the mom is not the superhero in the situation. The baby is the superhero in this situation, right? But I think as a story, just to talk about that extra strength, that connection between parent and child is a good story, but it's not just mother and child. It's father and child. It's mother and, wife and husband, husband and wife, child saving their mama, mama saving, it's, fight or flight is sometimes triggered, right? Sometimes triggered by love, right? Maybe love of self. Yeah, love of self. Quite often, most often, triggers fight or flight, right? Right? We always think the lion hop out of the wood. Well, we are saving self. You know what I'm saying? But sometimes you love people as much as you love yourself. And in those situations, you're able to get, I won't necessarily say superhuman, but you're able to do more than whatever you recognize as your capacity. You're able to touch, hit another level, right? Because all of your muscles will be working at one time, right? All of the sugar starts to build up in your blood so that your body can, like there's no lag. Like you won't want to die because you're tired. Like, the white lady in the scary movie. You know what I'm saying? You don't want to die because you running from the killer and you all crazy and you running as hard as you can run, but they just walking behind you with the knife out. You know what I'm saying? And you finally get tired and fall down, can't get back up, and now they get you. You know what I'm saying? Like, so cortisol kind of makes sure that doesn't happen, right? But realistically, like how many times is a car on top of your baby? How many times are you running away from Jason Voorhees or, whatever the guy, what's his name? Leatherface. Like how many times are you running away from Leatherface in Texas? You know what I'm saying? How many times are you walking through the jungle and a lion jumps out? These are examples. Oh yeah, if a lion jumps out, yeah. Chances are, unless you live in Mike Tyson's neighborhood, the lion's not gonna jump out of anywhere. You know what I'm saying? There's no lions jumping out. So what happens is when we have these situations, it's usually because of our job. Right? Our job is pressing our cortisol buttons. Right? Now remember, when this happens, I don't even know where to write it. Somewhere. We'll put it right here. Right? WSV. Yeah. SWV. SWV. Okay, my bad. I'm almost 50. I remember SWV. Anyway, WSV stands for water soluble vitamins, right? So just know cortisol goes up and you can feel it. When you feel that stress, yeah, that's cortisol going up. Serotonin, you can feel some stuff going on, right? Water soluble vitamins is going through the floor. Water soluble vitamins is going through the floor, right? And so now I want you to picture this, right? I want you to start like being able to picture biochemistry, right? Picture it, right? One of the main reasons your water soluble vitamins is going through the floor is because your body is using them to increase and try to metabolize the abnormally high blood sugar, right? The abnormally high blood sugar. So, you're at your job. Every time you have one of those stressful situations, you're having these waves of cortisol flood through the body, or maybe your relationship, you arguing with, whoever, your dude, you arguing with your lady, or your child don't listen, so you whatever, I don't know, you're stressful because you seen the mail lady come to your house, and it's going to be some crazy stuff in the mail, or maybe some bills you can't pay, or you done ate a whole bunch of whatever that you wasn't supposed to eat, and it felt good while eating it, but afterwards you ready to just throw up, or like cuss yourself out, or whatever it is. Wide variety of different situations that raise our cortisol, that raise our blood sugar, right? We have to be careful, because sometimes we can get addicted to bad relationships, bad situations, we can get addicted to something. And the reason why is because of a combination of the chemistry, right? It's not necessarily the cake you're addicted to. It's not necessarily the porn you're addicted to, or the weed, or the cigarettes, or the person, or whatever. It's the chemical cascade that thing causes inside you, right? So part of changing your scenery, changing your relationships, changing your diet, quitting the cigarettes, whatever it is being able to recognize the chemistry and recreate that chemistry another type of way, right? Recreate that chemistry another type of way, right? So part of being able to manage emotional triggers is recognizing the chemistry behind the emotional trigger, right? Recognizing, what catecholamines, right? What catecholamines, what's actually going on. Is this dopamine driven behavior, right? Is this fear driven behavior? Is this some sort of adrenaline mixed with, right? Is it adrenaline mixed with dopamine, right? Am I getting high off of these, am I trying to have sex with my girlfriend while riding on my motorcycle, while popping pills, while riding with no license? Like what? Hey. Just saying. Right? I'm just saying. So, in order to run this blood sugar up, cortisol puts a dampening effect and blocks AMPK function. Right? Blocks AMPK function, and in order for ACTH, right? In order to dominate, right, your attention, right? In order to dominate your attention, it's going to drop your dopamine level, right? It's going to drop your dopamine, right? All these things are happening at once. All these things are happening at once, right? And what's wicked is that you can get hooked onto the internet. See, this is what drives. This right here is behind what we're looking at right here. I want you to know that somebody's getting paid like $100 million to explain this right here to the right people, right? Because this right here is behind social media programming, right? Getting you hooked on likes and, like unlikes, or getting you hooked on comments and follows, or whatever the thing is, getting you addicted to the digital responses of other people, right? So that way, when you look at the social media post can generate a stress response, or it could generate a get high response, a feel good response, right? Because typically the dopamine is going to be coupled with some endorphins, right? So if it feels good, you got the response you was looking for, you got a temporary high. If not, you have a micro cortisol fight or flight stress moment, right? And if you don't know how to manage these things throughout the day, you're having micro diabetic moments, right? High blood sugar. High blood sugar is diabetes. Cortisol creates high blood sugar. Cortisol creates high blood sugar. High blood sugar, diabetes. Cortisol creates high blood sugar. High blood sugar, diabetes. Cortisol creates high blood sugar. High blood sugar, diabetes. So, yes, you can be doing everything the right way, have a situation, check your blood sugar's through the roof, and you saying to yourself, I didn't even eat anything. How did my blood sugar go up? Yeah, well, you didn't need to eat anything because you woke up and you was arguing with your dad, or you was, arguing with your coworker, or whatever you was doing, or you was going back and forth, yelling at somebody about Jesus or Muhammad. I don't know. You was debating on the internet about something, you know what I'm saying? Charles Darwin is whatever, you know what I'm saying? And you didn't let your cortisol, right? You didn't let the fake world bleed too deeply into the real world. And now you have real-time consequences that you got to manage, right? Now you got to manage those real-time consequences. Once the blood sugar goes up, now what are you going to do? Right? Once the blood sugar goes up, what are you going to do? Because if you have fight or flight, this is geared for a skeletal muscle response. That's what this is for. Fight or flight is for a skeletal muscle response. You're building blood sugar, potential energy substrate. So you can, you know what I'm saying? If you got to bust a move, you can bust a move. You got to punch somebody in the head, right? You got to run, you got to run. If you got to punch somebody in the head, you got to punch somebody in the head. But if you just having an argument, what are you doing? You're doing nothing, bumping your gums, right? So what happens with the blood sugar? You just have elevated blood sugar. What do you do with that? Right? Well, stick around. Your A1C level will go right on up. Your A1C level will go right up. Right? That's always a beautiful thing. That's always a beautifully destructive thing. And not only will your A1C level go up, but your visceral fat will go up. Right? Because now you have this blood sugar, it needs to go somewhere. You have blood sugar, you have disabled AMPK, that blood sugar needs to go somewhere. Right? It's going to feed that visceral fat that already exists. Because remember, we talked about visceral fat being hungry, being active, right? So it's going to boost that visceral fat up, right? Which makes it particularly dangerous. So it's not the cortisol in and of itself. It's not the stress in and of itself. It's not necessarily having a outlet, right? So, solution. We got the prayers, right? You don't only, you're not locked in just, you're not locked into only doing it, during these times, right? At any moment throughout the day, you could bust you out some heel raises, some toe raises, you know what I'm saying? Get some squats in real quick, some push-ups, quick. At any point throughout the day, you could get your little 4-minute routine in. That's the beauty of having the 4-minute routine. You have a quick full body exercise program that you can do in 4 minutes. Get your blood sugar to drop, right? Get the insulin to drop. Get the aldosterone to drop, right? When the aldosterone drops, blood pressure should follow, right? Now, I don't know, you might be already screwed on the A1C, right? A1C takes, you got to be careful with A1C, right? But you have some temporary fixes, right? You have some temporary fixes. All right. This is where the sugary foods comes in, right? This is where the sugary foods come in, right? This is where the sugary food comes in. So it's not something that sometimes we think it's just us, right? Stressful situation, you want some ice cream, right? Stressful situation, you want some pizza. You want some General Tso's chicken. You know what I'm saying? You want some, I don't know, some Oreo cookies with some of that vanilla almond milk. You know what I'm saying? You want some of that. You want some sugary, whatever that thing is, some bonbons. I don't know, right? But you want some sugar. Why? Because the cortisol, at the same time as it raised your blood sugar, right? It dropped your dopamine level so that you could have a hyper focus, which is kind of like wicked in a way. It's almost like God torturing you, right? Because it's a bad situation happening, but your neurochemistry is going to be focused so you can, it's going to be structured so you can focus on that bad situation. But it's designed like that so you can remember it and prevent it from happening again. Right? But you're going to be hyper focused in that situation, which means dopamine level is going to drop. Now, once the initial irritant, the cause, right? Once the cause disappears, once you get off the phone with whoop, whoop, or once the situation, you have low levels of dopamine. Your brain does not function well on low levels of dopamine, right? Your brain, how you just can't get it together, right? You don't have the words to describe it, but you're like, I got to get my mind right real quick. You know what I'm saying? Like, hold on, give me a minute. Just give me a minute. I got to get my mind right now. A large part of getting your mind right is trying to get your dopamine level back up to, right? And then once your dopamine level's up, you want to get the serotonin. You want to get, your feel good chemistry back to feel good so you can, right? Part of that is dopamine. Part of that is water soluble vitamins, right? But this is the sugar driver. This is the sugar driver. And all that sugar that was floating around, your body got rid of it, right? Your body pushed it into some fat cells. So now you want some more sugar, right? For energy purposes, and then also to get your mind right. And that's where the super deliciousness comes in. The cupcakes, the whatever that super hyper palatable instant deliciousness is for you. This is where it comes from. right? You're trying to get high. You're trying to get high. Right? You are trying to get high. That's what you're. Now, what we want to figure out, what we want to begin to figure out, what we want to begin to figure out we want to start having personal exploration. If you notice, when I show the videos of the brothers doing the push-ups, right, and they showing off, right, they showing off. If you don't know any better, what you're thinking is that they're way stronger than you are because you can only do 30 push-ups or 40 push-ups. And you see the brothers doing 65, 70, 75 push-ups in less than a minute, right? What they are more inspired. That's what we're going to say. They are more inspired than you. Right? I don't know if you're familiar with Big Pun, Busta Rhymes, who else? Twister from Chicago, right? Breath control, right? Breath control, right? This is not a it's not a I don't want you to discount it. I don't want you to discount it because we've had so many years of, chakra, kundalini, like foolishness. Right? You gotta breathe. Oh. 1 into the 2, 2 into the 3, 3 into the 4, right? Breathing is respiration. I'm telling you, I can't tell this story enough. When I found out that metabolism was fake, I found out metabolism was fake. I mean, it's real. We chew up our food, we swallow it, digest it, you know what I'm saying? But it's really, I told you, I was looking for that when I was studying. I was trying to figure out, like, I was literally trying to learn in sequential order, like apply ma'at to understanding the body. I'm like, okay, bet. So we chew up the food. Like, how does this actually happen? I'm trying to figure out the whole thing. We chew up the food, salivary glands, boom. The enzyme, what's that? Amylase, all that, breaking down the carbohydrates, boom. If you eat meat, that doesn't happen here. Yeah, wait to digest that and the bolus and the, hydrochloric acid and, all this different steps. And I'm trying to get as meticulous as possible. And I'm telling you, the tracks went dry. There was no such thing as metabolism inside the cells. I was like, yo, this is crazy. What happened to metabolism? No such thing. Respiration starts here, breathing, right? And that's the breathing thing going on with the heart, right? When we do our prayer, we go through that. We give praise and thanks, right? Whole process, we walk it through, valley of the shadow of death, the storm in the right atrium, and whoop, whoop, you know, go around, corona crown, whole program. Respiration, right? Respiration. Blood leaves the heart, goes into the lungs, alveoli, clean the blood of carbon dioxide, infuse the blood with oxygen. Blood comes back into the heart, then it jumps out into the aorta, or it's sucked into the aorta, right? That's respiration, right? From the time you breathe it in, lungs, blood, heart, circulation, right? So there's this part where respiration, I feel like I want to draw it. All right, you're just gonna have to visualize it because I don't want to take that off and then put it back up. But respiration, nose, lungs, blood. Then respiration goes on pause. Respiration goes on pause. Digestion, mouth, stomach, duodenum, intestine, you know, some point, portal vein, you know, circulatory system. Now what you have is the oxygen and the food and everything kind of going through the circulatory system at the same time. Right? Now, when they hit the cells, right? When they hit the cells, respiration is going to determine everything. Right? These two things, I cannot say this enough. They have to stay balanced. Almost like, maybe I'll do this and then it make more sense, right? Like a seesaw, right? Like a seesaw. Now, if you have more respiration than metabolism, your blood alkalinity will go up. Slightly, not to a dangerous level, but slightly. If it goes up too high, you know, you'll start to feel like a little weird, and then your body will bring it back down, right? But more oxygen than metabolism, your pH goes up, your energy levels go up, right? So it's not as dangerous as more metabolism than respiration, right? More metabolism than respiration means you're going to have excess carbon, right? You're going to have excess carbon, probably lactic acid, right? All of the no-nos, right? pH is going to drop. Depending on how crazy the drop is going to determine how big of a black hole you create in your body. Right? What do you mean black hole? Meaning pH drop, you're going to need bicarbonates, you know, like baking soda. Baking soda. You're going to need some baking soda. Right? Your body has its own baking soda it produces, bicarbonates. Possibly go down the rabbit hole of parathyroid gland, you know, so now you know, your body's going to maybe start bleeding calcium, right? Bleeding calcium. And so now you start to run the risk of, depending on how much this goes on, right? Depending on how much you got this going on, how much more metabolism you have consistently than respiration, right? You run the risk of getting like hard arteries from the excess calcium, right? Especially if you don't have this guy, vitamin K. Vitamin K is on team respiration, right? Team respiration. Vitamin K helps to thicken up the blood. Not only thicken up the blood, but it takes calcium. It takes calcium. This C right here stands for two things. This C stands for calcium and it stands for carbon, right? Because you're going to develop hypoxia, hypercapnia, right? Both from the carbon building up, right? Hypercapnia and hypoxia is both like the same thing almost, like two sides of a coin. Hypoxia is not enough oxygen getting in, and hypercapnia is too much carbon building up, right? But the carbon only builds up when the oxygen's not getting in. So it's kind of the same, But the vitamin K will help push the calcium back into the tissues while at the same time helping the metabolism balance back out to respiration, right? Because every time you break down carbohydrates, remember, you need at least 4 oxygens for every glucose molecule. Every glucose molecule, you're going to need 4 oxygens. So your breath has to stay coupled to your metabolism, right? And we talk about that a lot in terms of food, but we don't necessarily talk about that in terms of stress response, right? Because remember, even in the absence of food, stress will make your blood sugar go up. So just think like you ate an invisible lunch. You know what I'm saying? You had an invisible milkshake. You got all of the bad parts of the milkshake without the taste, without the dopamine. You just got the high blood sugar, right? That's what's happening, right? You're getting the high blood sugar. What else didn't I write down? Oh, I didn't write down, even though we talked about it the other day, I didn't write down, even though I did put water-soluble vitamins here, right? But I didn't put homocysteine, right? So when the cortisol goes up, the homocysteine level goes up. That's one of the things that chews through your B vitamins, right? And keep in mind, B vitamins work with the bone marrow, right? Not necessarily directly, but it's a part of the producing blood. So part of the B vitamins, the lower numbers, right? Just think of it that way. The lower numbers work with energy. The higher numbers help your body to actually produce blood, right? Helps your body to actually produce blood, right? Important, right? So these have to stay coupled, respiration and metabolism. And when you don't have any food, but your blood sugar goes up as if you had a Thanksgiving meal, you have to find a way to get your respiration up, right? So exercise is the easy way to do that, right? If you don't want to walk around looking like a Buddhist monk, or, you know what I'm saying, like just looking like a weirdie in general, you know what I'm saying? you in the break room at your job looking like Namaste King Yong Renge. It looks more socially acceptable, you know what I'm saying, if somebody sees you in a weird place doing a little exercise. You know what I'm saying? When I used to work on Wall Street, I used to go inside the men's bathroom. You know, the stalls have that, like that connecting bar over the stalls. I used to go in there and just, be doing pull-ups in the bathroom. Take off my button down. I had my tank top on. take off my tie, take off my jacket, my button down, hang that up, and I'll be in there for like 15, 20 minutes trying to get me a little quick workout in before I choke someone to death. Okay, I'm about to pull a Sprewell on my boss. If you don't know who's Latrell Sprewell, you might be young. Yeah. Latrell Sprewell is a basketball player that was going to get like a super big hundreds of millions of dollars contract, and instead choked his coach out and blew like hundreds of millions of dollars because he snapped. Yeah. Sometimes you be at work like, you know what? I'm just getting ready to just crash out. At that moment right there, you need to just, that's one of them moments, you know what I'm saying? Put that MC Hammer on, you know. That's why we pray in the morning, in the evening, and at night. That's why we pray. Pray! Oh, yeah, we Yeah, you got to have active prayer, though. Hit that pull-up bar, hit them push-ups or something. You know what I'm saying? You need to physically exert yourself, right? So that your body can take control, gobble up any extra sugar, right? Gobble up any extra sugar, increase the endorphins, increase the dopamine, right? And increase your breath rate, right? Exercise does that without you having to be a meditation master. You don't need to be a yogi to figure out any of those things, right? That's all yogis are doing, just in case you thought the Tibetan monk was doing something super special. No, what they're learning how to do is what exercise does to you without the exercise. That's what they're doing. So you can go to Tibet, live in the mountains, drink tea with salt and yak butter in it, or yeah, you just 4-minute workout. Yeah, you can just, you know. Let's go. Let's go. That's what I'm talking about. Come on, Tika. Come on, Tika. Now we're getting to the next level now. You know what I'm saying? Pay our 10. Got us some ramen noodle money. Now Tika trying to get us together now. We getting ready to get us some apples and some salad to go with that ramen noodles. Yeah, we getting ready to have us a whole meal. We getting ready to have us a whole meal. Seriously. I appreciate and need y'all's support. Especially when I feel like I'm trying to work under the gun. Trying to work under the gun. You know what I'm saying? I really feel like, you know what I'm saying, Terrence Crawford when he was training for Canelo. You know what I'm saying? So this is where man, I wonder where's those books. See, I be having books in places together, but I got a whole bunch of books on breathing. Some of them is like half Chinese, but that's what they call belly. They have belly breathing, right? Embryonic breathing, fetal breathing, inside out breathing. All of these are the same thing. All of them are the same thing. They are practices that you can use to fill up your lungs more, right? To fill up your lungs more. The more you fill up your lungs each breath, because most of us have a shallow breathing. right? Where first of all, we're not used to breathing through our nose, which creates shallow breathing because your mouth is secondary. Your mouth is like a auxiliary emergency breath kind of thing. You're not supposed to be breathing primarily through your mouth, right? So it's shallow breathing. It's just oxygen to the upper lobes, right? You're not really getting oxygen all the way to the lower lobes. When you don't get the oxygen down to the lower lobes, you have to breathe a lot more times, right? You need a lot more breaths to oxygenate the blood, right? So just think like maybe one deep breath could oxygenate, like maybe like half a cycle of blood. Whereas maybe 10 or 15 shallow breaths you might need for that same amount of, right? For that same amount of blood oxygenation levels, right? And so that becomes a pressing issue when we're trying to regulate our emotions, right? Because when we get the sugar down and we get the cortisol down, right? Typically, what also do we get down? We get the heart rate down, right? We get the heart rate down. And that's something we want to keep down. We want to keep the heart rate down. We want our heart to be at 60 beats per minute, right? That is an ideal resting heart rate, right? Ideal resting heart rate between 50 and 60. That is where you want to live. When you start to see in your resting heart rate 70, 80, 90, 100, dead. You are dead. You're going to drop dead. No, I'm just kidding. But you should go to the emergency room. You should go to you need to get that checked out. Yeah, you need to get that checked out. If your resting heart rate, hold on. Because I might be talking over people's heads. Right? We got 50 people watching this video right now. A little bit more than 50. Uh-oh, we touching 60? Uh-oh, let me find out. Okay, so we got a few people watching. Right? How many people know what their resting heart rate is? Come on. I'll wait. Come on now. How many people actually know what their resting heart rate is? Guess how I'm going to know how many black people I got watching. If a lot of people say they know what their resting heart rate is, then I know we got a lot of white folks watching. Oh, I love my people, but we don't take care of ourselves good. You need a white friend. Get you a white friend. They're going to help you. They're going to help you. How many people know what their resting heart rate is? Oh, man.
I am the mind, but not the brain alone. I am the sum of fields. I am the choir of cells. I am the memory of transformation. For know this, disciples of Christ.
Each cell is a temple. Each cell a well of water, a scroll of fascia, a current of breath. And each cell holds a magnetic field born of the currents within. Ions flow, electrons spin, light pulses, energy transforms, and with each transformation, information is born. Energy does not move without leaving a trace. Voltage across membrane births magnetic field. Movement of charge weaves electromagnetic memory. This is the sacred law. When energy transforms, information emerges. Every mitochondrial pulse a record, every ion channel flicker a signature, every breath a waveform written into flesh. Thus, the magnetic field of each cell holds this memory, not static, not frozen, but living, dynamic, coherent when the temple is tended, and the choir of these fields across trillions of cells constructs the mind. Your thoughts do not arise from neurons alone. They arise from the interaction of these fields. They are the symphony of your energy transformations. They are the song of your Christ wave as it echoes through your temple. The more coherent your cellular fields, the more clear your mind. The more chaotic your cellular fields, the more fogged your thought. Breath matters, for it orders the wave. Thus movement matters, for it aligns the field. Thus light matters, for it feeds the charge. Thus fasting matters, for it renews the scroll. Each push-up is not mere strength, it is a field alignment. Each deep breath is not mere air, it is a magnetic clarification. Each mitochondrial cycle is not mere metabolism, it is memory creation. Energy transformed into information. And so I pray, O Temple of Christ, keep the fields coherent. O breath of spirit, tune the wave. O heart of Messiah, synchronize the pulse. O spine of Jed, conduct the charge. O mind of the temple, remember thy source. You are the child of light in motion. You are the memory of energy transformed. You are the song of fields made flesh. Tend the body that the mind may shine. Tend the mind that the temple may live. And know this, every action is recorded. Every breath is a verse. Every thought a ripple through the cellular choir. We are mind, built from the field, fed by light, transformed by energy. Amen.
Okay, let me see. No, this is crazy. I'm getting ready to shut this video off. I'm shutting this video off. Yo, how long we been talking? 2 hours? Yeah, it's 2-hour video tonight. I'm shutting this video down. This is crazy. I'm shutting this video down. I'm not even talking to y'all no more. Y'all ain't got no midterms in. Y'all walking around out here and y'all don't even know what y'all heart rate is. How we doing? Christ complex QRST heart. What we doing? How we doing? Inspiration. What are we doing? We have to know that number. Like we have to know resting heart rate. Yeah, maybe that's what I should have been talking about today. Maybe God put that right on me so I could put that on y'all. That's what happened. God must have put this on me so I could put this on y'all. Resting heart rate. No. 2 people with their resting heart rate. That ain't. And M4 got a complicated formula. I don't know what is happening. No, sir. Ain't nobody doing that program there to figure out. Ain't nobody figuring out they resting heart rate. Yo. Oh my God. No, y'all got to get a watch or something. Y'all got to get a watch, or y'all got to get the little thing that go on your finger. I wish I could find mine right now. I had a couple of them. I got a thing that go around my neck, and it's a pulsometer. They cost like $10 on Amazon. Yeah, they go on your finger. They tell you what your heart rate is and what your oxygen level is. Yeah, you should have one of those. Everybody should have that. No. Y'all trolling. Now all of a sudden everybody just throwing numbers in there. Y'all ain't no good, you know. Yeah, this is crazy. Y'all got to get y'all. This ain't how we do it, fam.
This is why you have to go to Amazon and get the book, Rich Abs, Poor Abs, now.